What's up, everyone? Today we got Mr. Davis Carman. Now, he's the president of Apologia. It's an educational curriculum. He's also a homeschooling dad of 7 kids. He brought in a bunch of insight with how to have a structured routine, what it's like homeschooling so many kids, as well as what he found worked best for each one of his kids and what he's doing now with Apologia to help homeschooling parents. I'll see you guys inside. To kind of get us going, just in case some of the parents aren't familiar with who you are and what you do, can you give us a little background on yourself as well as your organization?
Sure, sure. Are we officially starting right now?
Oh, yes, yes, ready?
Okay, yeah,
Action.
I'll let you do it. Yeah, so I'm Davis Carman, married to my wife Rachel for 39 years.
Oh, that's
We
amazing.
have 7 kids. Right now, their ages 35 down to 22. I
Okay.
always like to say we have 2 boys on the front end, 2 boys on the back end, and 3 girls tucked safely in the middle. But they've all graduated from our homeschool. We It was a 26-year journey. I actually like to say it was 26.2 years. That way it sounds like a marathon. And it was definitely that. It was one of the best things that ever happened to us. It was not part of our original plan. I'd like to say God got our attention with a providential 2x4 over the head. So we were reluctant starters, but after about 3 or 4 years, it's like this light bulb turned on, and we had a vision for what this could be for our family. And then 26 years later, graduated all of them. They are 4 of the 7 are married. We have 12 grandkids right now, and I'm sure there's going to be more on the way as we have more marriages and so forth. So that's a little bit of the Carmen family. We acquired Apologia in 2008. So for 17, 18 years, we've been leading the ministry and the organization. It was a high school science curriculum company 17 years ago, and we've since expanded to have elementary K through 12 creation-based science. We've added elementary math, and we have a Bible curriculum, and then we have various different resources to help and complement those to help homeschool families have the best Christ-centered experience they possibly can.
Man, I love that. So what was that 2x4 moment over your head? What was the blow that happened there?
Well, it's a presentation all to itself, but the long story short, we were prepared to send our son to the best public school near our house. And first day of school, he was not put on the bus that he was supposed to be on. The second day of school, he was put on the wrong bus. And by the grace of God, this impulsive little 6-year-old didn't get off somewhere saying, I guess I got to go get off here. And so thank goodness we weren't on the evening news. But at that point, he was terrified of buses. When, 3 days prior, he was all excited about that adventure. We at this point had lost complete confidence in the teacher. So I went to the principal and said, hey, no hard feelings. Let's just change teachers and, get started over again. And he did not do that. And I quickly found out that I actually was not in control of my son's education. So after 2 weeks of, kind of the same, I took a Friday off, made arrangements with the principal and the teacher to visit the class and spend the day with them. And early afternoon, I brought him home on that Friday, and we did not know what we were going to do on Monday. In the meantime, my wife was going to all the private schools, getting on the wait list. At this point, it doesn't matter what it costs. We just got to figure out something for our kindergartner. And over the course of that weekend and discussing, what our options were, I looked at my wife and I said, honey, we've been praying for his teacher all summer long. I think we might have been praying for you. And that began our journey.
Bugs when you said that. That is awesome. And it's crazy because my mom's best friend's daughter, her son's in first grade, and she's actually going to homeschool now. They're leaning very heavily toward because he is supposed to be like a walker that they allow him to walk home, and he meets his grandma on a golf cart Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, he gets on the bus. Well, one Tuesday they sent him out as a walker, so he just goes walking, thinking oh, my grandma must be coming here today. He's walking around waiting. He had the enough brain power to turn around and walk back to the school and say, "Hey, I can't find my grandma." So she got mad about that. They kind of blew it off. Like, don't worry about this. It's not a big mistake. And she's like, this is a huge mistake. You sent my kid out into the public with no supervision, with nowhere to go. The next time they put him on the bus on the wrong day. So he goes home. They're at work. There's nobody home. Luckily, the neighbor across the street just sees a little kid standing in front of the front door waiting to go in. So he goes, he gets him like, hey, come over here, calls his mom. She calls her mom, who eventually comes and gets him. But that problem, you said 26 years ago, is still happening today,
Oh
right
yeah.
now. So it's amazing.
Uh,
Wow.
If you guys have been doing it for that long, you guys walked like as homeschooling has changed over the years. Can you talk about like a little bit of the growth and like the positive movement we're seeing to where parents can gain more confidence to making this decision? Because I'm sure when you decided to do it, it probably was a little more taboo than it is now when you hear people are kind of pulling their kids out left and right.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. In 1996, when we started, we were literally our registration number in North Carolina was 11,000 and something. So there were roughly 11,000 families or students in North Carolina homeschooling then. Today, there's over 200,000 in North Carolina alone.
No
So
way.
the growth has been tremendous over the last few years. Roughly 10 years ago, and these are from North Carolina stats, but roughly 10 years ago, when the number of homeschoolers got to about 100,000, that was the first time there were more homeschool students in North Carolina than private school students. And today now it's roughly a 2-to-1 ratio. So there's large numbers. Uh, as a result, over the last 25 to 30 years, there's been tremendous support in terms of curriculum, resources, both online, live. And then COVID was what I like to call the best marketing plan nobody ever came up with for homeschooling. Uh, the, our vision at Apologia is that every family across the world would homeschool their kids from birth all the way to high school graduation. And in 2020, our vision was actually realized. All 60 million K through 12 students in America and all those roughly a billion around the world were doing some form of education at home for at least a few months. And it became like a trial run that was mandatory for everybody. And some people who were scared to death of ever even thinking about this possibility got the vision and said, wow, this actually is doable. It worked for our family and it was even good. Let's do this again. And slowly but surely, they went through their typical 3 to 4 year period where a family goes from scared to death, I can't do this, I'm not organized enough, I'm not patient enough, all the normal excuses and fears, and realize that, wait a second, this is more than just about academics. This is about building relationships. This is about learning to love reading, to love learning, to love God. And suddenly the family relationships are improving and better. When you think you might not make it if you spend that much time together, they actually get better. And so there's all these unexpected blessings that families started realizing and have been realizing for many years now, to where they realize, we can do this as a family. We can find a community to get the support we need, and there are plenty of resources to help us succeed, whether we're looking for academic resources, critical thinking resources, online, digital, physical textbooks, hybrid schools, family getting together in small pods. There's all kinds of creative solutions that people have come up because they've taken control and directed the education of their kids. They've taken responsibility that was theirs all along.
Yeah, no, it's funny. God works in very strange ways. And I was during the COVID stuff, I was very against it. But then after it went through and I started seeing some of my family members who were insanely against homeschooling, they gave us backlash the whole entire time. My parents did it. Their kids went through public school, all of a sudden had that experience, like you said, and now they're homeschooling their kids. So it's funny that they got that little taste in their mouth and they realize, oh wow, this is actually not as bad and not as scary as it may be. Now there's still, like you said, there's that trial period. What makes you say that 3 to 5 years? Is that just kind of what you experienced over your course of doing it? Because when you said that, it was like a light bulb moment for me. It's like that's exactly
Yeah.
about the time it probably takes.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually asked. I have a workshop called Don't Ring the Bell, kind of a school reference, but also it refers to the Navy SEALs. When they're going through training, if they ring the bell, then they can get out and everything is going to be easy again. But in homeschooling, and North Carolina has some tremendous stats. So you actually see the following stats in North Carolina that I think play out anecdotally for families. They certainly did for us. And that is, after 1 year of homeschooling, about 20% of the families will drop out for whatever reason. It was too hard, 1 year and they're done. After the second year, about another 20% drop out. After the third year, about 10%. And on that fourth year, it's less than 5%. It kind of levels out. So after about 3 to 4 years, we're seeing statistically that about half the families that began homeschooling stay in the game and the other half exit. And so that's what the statistics are showing us. But I also hear that in stories. It was our own personal experience. That first year is the rockiest. You're figuring things out. You might not even make it past the first year. The second year, often if you connect with the right people, maybe a little light bulb will turn on and you say, hey, let's try it again, do things a little bit differently, kind of relax a little bit and just do some reading, enjoy family time. The kids will figure this out. They're young. And then the third year, you might be writing educational philosophies, reading books about learning styles. And then by the fourth year, for us personally, we were committed to this. And like you, our families were pretty against it. It was very new in the mid to late 90s. And by that fourth year, our family wasn't asking, how long are you going to do this? But they were saying, are you going to do this in high school? And my attitude was, yes, we will. But I had no answers for what high school was going to look like yet. But I saw what God was doing in our family. I saw how the amazing potential. And so I realized God will give us the answers. He'll show us the way. And this became a walk of faith for us. And if you think about it as a Christian, we're saved by grace through faith in Christ, but that walk of faith doesn't end. We are sanctified and persevere, and sometimes it might include how we're going to educate our kids, how we're going to discipline them, how we're going to train them, what's our marriage going to look like. And homeschooling became this unifying force for Rachel and I in our marriage because we were on a mission. And our mission was to raise our kids, and and the buck stopped with us. We chose to take all the responsibility, which was very scary, but at the same time, it was very exciting. And that's what walking by faith, feels like for the Christian, whether you're homeschooling or not. When you really let God decide things for you, it's scary. Or am I really going to relinquish control to the sovereign God of the universe? Well, it's actually one of the best things we can do because he's a lot smarter than we are.
Without a doubt. Can you give some of our parents just maybe some tips or some motivation maybe for those first 3 years when they're kind of getting going, and let them understand that those challenges that they are facing right now, we're pretty much all facing them. And you're not the only family going through it.
No, that's great. So, I shared a little bit of how we got started. The one thing I didn't say is prior to us having this public school experience that was negative that got us started homeschooling, we actually, prior to our move to North Carolina, we lived on a little street in Ohio with about 5 or 6 neighbors, half of them homeschooled. And
Oh, wow.
we thought they were crazy. But we lived there for 3 years and we became great friends. We're still in touch with them. It was a wonderful time for our whole family. But it was an introduction to homeschooling, but not for us. Then we get to North Carolina, have this experience, start homeschooling very reluctantly. And who were the first 3 people we called? Those friends in Ohio. And we said, please help. We're going to homeschool. What in the world do we do? Their answer to us is the same way I would answer your question. And that is just sit down on the couch, take a deep breath, and read to your kids. Well,
Wow.
okay, that's great, but what else do I do? No, literally, just relax, cuddle up on the couch, read some good books over and over again. Your kids are young. That's what you need to do. And I strongly recommend that today because if you can teach your kids to love reading and to love learning, those are 2 huge keys to success. And like I said, all 7 of ours have graduated. And I would say that those are 2 of the big keys. Now, the third thing to love reading, love learning, but love God. And that is I'll say one of the 3 R's in our family. So you often think about reading, writing, and arithmetic. If we could just get to those basics, school anywhere would probably be a little better. So as we took control of the education of our kids and started thinking about what are our family goals, we came up with 3 R's that were unique to our family. And it was relationships, reasoning, and resolve. So the number one priority for our homeschool was we wanted our kids to love God, to love reading, to love learning in that order. and to love their neighbor, to love their family. It was all about relationships. That was our primary goal. Of which a way to think about that is when the kids were doing some work on the kitchen table, for instance, and they're doing their math, and a fight breaks out over whose pencil this is. One option is to say, stop arguing and get back to the math. Well, that's prioritizing the academics. And we had to train ourselves to say, okay, boys, stop arguing about whose pencil this is. Let's get the relationship straight, and then we can get back to math. So that's how we approached it. It was definitely a discipline for Rachel and I because it wasn't a natural response. But we can train ourselves, and that's the beauty of homeschooling is the parents are on this journey too. And then the reasoning is we wanted our kids to be able to think critically, to think logically, to think properly, and then resolve. That's where we wanted to ask our kids, and this was a question we asked them many times as they were growing up, and that is not what do you think will be the most satisfying career for you, not what do you think will make the most money or be the most rewarding, but what is God calling you to do? And it's probably going to be something that he's gifted you with as well. And so as a result, one of the beauties of homeschooling is you can actually create a unique, customized education to each one of your kids. So
Yes, sir.
all 7 of my kids had a very different education depending on what they were interested in, what they were gifted in. A good example is one of my daughters wanted to be a missionary to China. Turns out she's studying to be a nurse right now after graduating college and doing other things in the pro-life world. But when she was in high school and wanted to be a missionary to China, we gave her 10 years worth of Chinese language and culture lessons because she was interested. So from age 8 to 18, that's what she did. She's doing her little Rosetta Stone lessons in the kitchen. We're all watching, and none of us are figuring it out, but she's getting them all right. And you just can't do that anywhere else. Most places don't even have a Chinese language option, but we could with her, and the same with each of our kids. So as a result, we have 2 philosophers, an artist, 2 psychologists, a mathematician. It's a wide range of career paths and higher education study, because all 7 of our kids are very unique.
Man, that's awesome. I kind of want to go a little deeper because your family's like the best test pool right there with so many kids you guys are going through with. Was there some way, or can you talk to the parents about how you were able to locate those skills of what they were gifted in and allowing them to actually chase down the passion? For instance, your daughter's studying Chinese. Most parents are going to be afraid of even trying to do that because they don't know no Chinese,
Right.
So can you talk to them about how you guys kind of allowed their passions and their gift that God gave them to kind of evolve and come to light on its own?
Yeah, I think one thing that's important for parents to hear is don't get nervous if your kids say they're interested in something that maybe you think is totally impractical or you have zero knowledge about. Just run with it because God is doing something in their mind and their heart and their soul. And part of it is just you want your kids to follow God. And so if you're asking the question along the lines in some form of what is God calling you to do, then it's okay if they chase certain things. They may never end up there. Like I said, my daughter's not a missionary to China, but she has a heart for people. She's followed God her entire time. And she has a philosophy. She's one of my 2 philosophers. She did several postgraduate programs after college, and now she's in nursing school. As she's been largely in the pro-life movement, it's kind of brought her to that point. But one of my sons in high school, when he was in 8th grade, I kid you not, he had finished all the Apologia science curriculum, the 12th grade curriculum. I mean, he was done because he had a gift for biology and he wanted to be a veterinarian. So we were going with that, and it looked like that's the route he was going to go. Well, then in 9th or 10th grade, he stumbled upon this animation software and started using that many times. I introduced him to a cousin of mine who's in the animation industry, who introduced him to somebody else, and suddenly all he's doing is computer animation and thinking he wants to work for Pixar. Well, after he graduated high school, he did an 18-month program where, which is actually it's a really interesting program, but the professors there are employees at Pixar, Blue Sky, Disney, and all the major studios, and they're looking for budding talent. So he's one of the stars in this class. He finishes and he gets an interview at Pixar. And one of his parents gets to go because he's 20 years old, and Rachel I got the short end of that stick, but she got to go on that tour. And when they were there, they were showing their portfolios. It's a semi-light interview, and the guy that was doing the tour said, "Son, you're way too gifted to come here and just animate movies. You'll be stuck here. You need to go get an art degree and then come back." So that lit a fire under my son to go to art school. So he did that, and then his interest and his network took him in a different path. So now he's a thriving artist and illustrator at home, married. They have a house in Atlanta. They have 3 kids. They're doing great. He's not at Pixar, but he's right where God ended up eventually directing his traffic. When once upon a time we thought he'd be a veterinarian, and so everybody's going to go a different path as they follow God. And I think that's the key that parents need to just, I'll say, kind of relax on and not try and force a direction for their kids and not try and live vicariously through your kids, but let them pursue God and listen to God as an individual.
And like you said earlier too, by allowing yourself to just have faith and, okay, God's going to point the direction for each one of them, those little skills that they were getting along the way when they thought they were going to go this way, I imagine still are used today, or still develop the human being that they are today, that allowed them to, okay, now they can really find where God is steering them and have all the skills, all the traits necessary to find success in that avenue.
That's so true.
It's just a matter of, like you said, it's very hard for us to do. But when we allow God to show us the way and kind of really just push us in the direction we're supposed to go, instead of being all thinking about like, okay, well, if this is it, now you could have forced your kid to go to veterinarian school because you guys spent all that time doing it, but because you took a step back and said, hey, this is the direction God's pushing him, let him do it. He's able to find out that, hey, I don't even want to work at Pixar anymore. I want to do this. I get to go to art school. I get to a new network and become a new individual of doing what they find happiness and passion and everything. And I love that so much. And I think that's something that our parents really should understand, because they feel that stress that because they're the homeschooling parent, they're the teacher, they're the guidance counselor, they're everything, that it's their job to push them into somewhere else, rather than say, no, it's your job just to guide your kid and allow them just to find what they light up with and just go ahead and go.
No, that is so true. And if I can, I think it'll really help to illustrate the point if I tell you a little bit of the story from my oldest. All 7 of my kids have a story like what I've shared, but with our oldest, he's the guinea pig. So we're feeling as a homeschool family, we got to get this one right. Otherwise, it's downhill from there. And so when he was in high school, he wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. And so we, as a good homeschool family, we did everything we could to help line things up to make that happen. And that's not a gimme. You're going to have to work for that. And so he was in Civil Air Patrol, got their top award, the Billy Mitchell Award, which is kind of like an Eagle Scout in that organization. He played sports. He was on a homeschool football league, which is a requirement to go to the academy. We became friends with families whose sons got an appointment. We got to know our U.S. congressman. And so we were doing all the right stuff. And after his junior year of high school, he got invited to a football camp at the U.S. Air Force Academy. So we're thinking, this is awesome. So he goes, and this gregarious, outgoing son of ours, who, when he went to camps, we never heard from a week or 2. He called after the first day and said, "Hey, Mom and Dad, how you doing?" And we're thinking, "No, we're doing good. Why are you calling? Is everything okay?" "Oh, yeah, just calling to check on you guys." Second night, a similar phone call. And so we're thinking, something's up. This is unusual. Well, he's gone for 2 weeks. He comes back. He's unusually quiet. And we're the summer is getting near the end, and we're gearing up for his senior year. So we go on our first dinner with our rising senior to say, okay, it's your senior year. What are our plans? What do we need to do? We're even thinking about graduation and all this stuff. And he sits down and says, "Mom, Dad, I don't think God's calling me to the Air Force Academy anymore." Well, we panicked. We don't have plan B. He doesn't have plan B. He doesn't seem to be college material at the time. And so we're thinking, well, are you going to join the Air Force? What are you going to do? And he didn't know. It's like, okay, so we're in seeking mode and he's in seeking God mode. So, relatively long story short, we visited some colleges. They were all disastrous visits. The worst college visits I ever did was with my first son. So that's not working out. By the end of the fall, we visit a place called Impact 360, which is a gap year program south of Atlanta. And when we go to visit, when we first walked in, I kind of sat down next to my son and said, you know, this place kind of reminds me of Chick-fil-A. Just kind of had that, it oozed with a little bit of excellence at the beginning.
Uh-huh.
So they come in to introduce their program and say, hey, welcome to Impact 360. We're a partnership between Union University in Tennessee and Chick-fil-A. I was like, okay, keep talking. And so he ended up going to this gap year program, which was fantastic. He got 18 hours of college credit. They go on a month-long mission trip. They do the Chick-fil-A service model. And visiting professors come in for 1 week at a time and talk about their specialty. And this one professor from the King's College in New York City came to visit, and he taught about his specialty and just connected with my son and said, King's is looking for the kind of students like you. I want you to come to King's. And we had never heard of King's College. He helped my son get accepted, get a scholarship. He was going to work for him. All these things that we could not have happened. God filled in these gaps that were tremendous. So then at this point, he's a year older. He's a little more college ready. And he goes to King's, does well, graduates, and gets a job teaching at a school in Arizona. Well, what does he do at this point? He teaches himself Latin. So this is the kid that we couldn't get to Spanish class when we were homeschooling in high school. And suddenly he's interested in teaching himself Latin. It's like all the dots were connecting for him. He's married at this time. He learns Latin. They have their first kid. And then he says, I think I want to go to graduate school. So he goes and gets his master's degree. Then his wife gets a master's degree. And then 5 years ago, he said, I think I want to get a PhD. So he moves to DC, spends 5 years, has 2 more kids. So he just had their fourth. He just finished his PhD, and now he's a professor at Regent University in Virginia.
That's where I went to college.
Well, he's literally in his first semester right now teaching.
That's awesome. That's great.
And I mean, I would have never predicted this for him when he was 16 and 17 years old. But God kept working on him. He kept following God's call and did the hard work, persevered in his own right. And like you were saying, he just continued listening to God and doing what, the next step was. It was a long journey, but now he's in a great place. He's he feels like this is where he can be for the long term and develop his career as a philosopher, as a church historian, and all the things that he's done specifically the last 5 years, getting his PhD. So, I'll add this too. He resisted us learning Spanish growing up. He taught himself Latin, and now he's basically a linguist. He knows Latin, Greek, Hebrew, German, and a little bit of French. That's just like, who could have? It's almost proof that Rachel and I didn't have that much to do with his actual education, but we did teach him to love learning, to love reading, and to love God.
What does he teach at Regent? I'm sorry, David.
No, go ahead, Beth. Go ahead.
Yeah, he teaches church history right now, but he's going to get to their region is on a good trajectory, so he sees a lot of opportunity to do a lot of other things with them. But church history is what he's teaching right now.
That's great. Well, good for him. I really enjoyed my time there. I miss it a lot, actually. Sorry, David. But I love working for you.
You don't got to say that because we're recording right now. We know the truth. That's an amazing story. And that's one thing we try to teach in our nonprofit is learning shouldn't stop when you graduate. You know what I mean? This is a lifelong thing that should be continuous throughout your whole entire life. And as homeschooling families, we should really just zone in on teaching the love of learning, giving them all the tools they need to love learning, rather than focusing so much on, is my kid reading at third grade level when he's in third grade? Or
Right.
It's more about understanding that the learning is where it's at, rather than trying to compare to the failing school system that we have and making sure you're keeping up with them. It's more about loving and learning and understanding that this is something that's going to be used your whole entire life. There is never a time that you should stop or just become content with where you are. And if you can really zone into that, it allows people like your son who really do it to allow their life to just take a trajectory they never expected. Speaking multiple languages, that's an insane accomplishment in itself. And you were saying that when he was in high school, he didn't even want to learn Spanish.
Right, right.
You know, so that's a beautiful story. I said, your family. Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned something about, reading at grade level. And I love telling this story, which really isn't about our family, but it's about young kids and how they learn to read. If you ask most people how old is a kid when they should read, most people will say 5 or 6 years old, because that's the pressure that's been put on people. That's the expectation that's been put on people. But the real stats are this. And let me start by just looking at child development. When does a child sit up? 6 months plus or minus a month. When do they walk? A year plus or minus 3 months. When do they ride a bike? 5 years plus or minus a couple years. When do they read? The answer is actually 8 years old plus or minus 3 years. So yes, some kids read at 5. And there's just as many kids that read at 11. Our oldest didn't read till he was 10. We were sure he was doing it on purpose to prove we were horrible homeschoolers. Our second kid read when he was 6. And then when one of our other kids wasn't reading when they were 6, 7, and 8, we weren't panicked, because at this point we realized they love sitting and listening to reading, and they will get this when they're good and ready. That's when they'll read.
Which is God's path for each one of them. And I can't remember who me and Miss Beth talked to a couple weeks ago, but he quoted this like super prestigious school that all these wealthy people send their kids to. And he said that they don't even worry about reading skill until all of the baby teeth are gone.
Oh, was it Pat Faranga?
Maybe. I think so. But
he's the growing without schooling guy.
I think so. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And that for me though was a light bulb moment, because I was just like, that it seems to make sense, because the brain is still developing at its own rate, and we're putting all these pressures on them. But once they lose all their baby teeth and they're kind of starting to mature out a little bit, it makes sense that, hey, now the brain is kind of more able to draw those synapses in there and really develop the skill of reading itself.
Right.
So I think that could be really encouraging. To one of the questions that I've gotten a lot in our DMs on Instagram is about reading, and hey, my kid doesn't want to get, and all I try to do is just give reinforcement that don't worry about it. Don't worry about it yet. Just keep working, and don't put no restrictions on yourself that if you don't get it by the end of this year, then you're failing. Just keep exposing them to the information and allow their brains to develop and really grasp it and go.
That's right.
Since we're talking to, when we do these, we're talking to parents and not for the kids themselves. What were some lessons you learned through homeschooling that maybe you would not have expected when you embarked on the journey?
Well, when I started, I had no idea how important it was to have an individualized, customized education for each kid. We've talked a lot about that. And so as we got farther down the path and started to experience that firsthand with our kids, to me, that's one of the great values of home education that doesn't happen in private or public school. Those tend to be more mass production type of factories, whereas homeschooling is creating, developing, like I say, that love of learning, that individualized, what is God calling you to do? And then as a result, your kids can spend a disproportionate amount of time on the things that they're really interested in and become really good at it as a result. And so we didn't have a clock or a bell to say we're doing 45 minutes of math, 45 minutes of science. We had a flow of the day. And so homeschooling became this lifestyle. And a lot of people talk about it being a lifestyle, but it's kind of hard. It's kind of an abstract thought, but it really is just going through the flow of the day. So, we start with maybe a family worship time, and then breakfast, and then cleanup. And then mom will take the young kids and she'll do some work with them while the older kids do some reading on their own. then they'll all gather together on the couch and do a read aloud together. And then the older kids will finish some stuff. The younger kids are done now. They'll go into the playroom and start playing with Legos and coloring books and other projects. And so that may end at noon, it may end at 1, it may end at 2 or 3. There's really no clock. It's the flow of the day. And then if character issues come up and somebody needs to be disciplined and trained to behave and obey, well, you just factor that in, and that becomes more important because that's a relationship issue. And math can wait, science can wait, history can wait if necessary. And so you never really get behind because you're not beholden to the lesson plan. Now, one of the things Rachel and I did that became very helpful in our homeschool journey is I did give her every Sunday night to do some planning. And what that at least allowed is even if Monday was off track by 10 in the morning, at least she had a plan to kind of come back to and say, okay, well, we'll get back on track Tuesday because Monday was a disaster because kids were sick or disobeying or, the dog spilled jumped on the table or something crazy like that. But you're doing life together. And that became something that we got used to and that we actually enjoyed, is that we're doing life together and learning is 24/7. And so there's all these opportunities that you don't want to miss. And mealtime is one of those great opportunities. We did our best to have all 3 meals together. Now, there was a time when I was working in an office out of the house. So I'm having dinners with the kids and family. But then the last 17 years, I've worked out of a home office. And so we would literally have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together as a family because there's something beautiful and bonding that happens when you just stop, relax. You don't rush through and inhale your food. You sit, relax. Everybody's helping to prepare it. You're sitting down together to eat it. Everybody's helping to clean up afterwards. And you're having some really good conversations along the way. So how are things going so far this morning? What did you learn at the end of the day? And then at dinner time, we would often practice our memory verses, do some Bible reading, something that just created a liturgy of sorts and a routine and a rhythm and an expectation. And everything became this family culture that Rachel and I were creating for our kids to experience what life looks like as a family. And what they saw was a marriage that made them want to get married. It created a family life that they wanted to have a family of their own later on. It created a homeschool setting where right now all of our kids that have kids, they want to homeschool their kids because of what they saw it can be. But they're in the trenches right now. I mean, one of my daughters has a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. And she's literally in the trenches. They're wonderful kids. They're very happy kids, so they're not as difficult as some kids can be. But she's talking to us saying, wow, this is a lot of work. I'm loving it. I want to homeschool, but right now I can't imagine having a third or homeschooling. I don't know what this is going to look like. And we just say, hey, just enjoy what you got right now. Your kids are very enjoyable. They smile, they laugh, they obey, they run around, they do cute things. And God will show you the next step. He'll provide the answers when it's time. You're actually homeschooling them right now because you got a really good routine with them. And so it's things like that as we watch our own kids going, okay, they're on a good trajectory, but I remember what it was like when we were in the trenches with young kids, sleepless nights, all the things that come with that, the disobedience and the training that's required. Parenting is 24/7. And as a grandparent, we go in, we watch it, it's wonderful, but we don't have to do it again tomorrow. We step away but it's a big reminder to us of, wow, yeah, I can feel for our kids because they got the energy, they got the youth, and I'm glad that God designed it that way. But yeah, it's still beautiful to watch them want something beautiful in family life.
Which is something that you said, 2 things I really want to highlight. One, homeschooling allows the family to have those meals together, which, like you said, it actually sets the kids up. Just a simple thing of eating lunch together, but surrounding them with that family, having the values, talking about discipline and whatever it is, it gives you the whole entire childhood to really model the correct values and the correct way a family should be throughout the whole entire childhood, rather than saying, okay, we only have dinner together, but then at dinner time we have little Billy here who needs to catch up on his homework. If he doesn't catch up on his homework, I'm gonna get in trouble with the school. But another thing, my mom, she had three, so we had three, and we were a rambunctious group. We were my brother and I were always, we want to go run in the woods. We don't want to go, we don't want to do our school. Talk to the parents a little bit how you guys were able to do with seven. I mean, that's unbelievable, really. How are you guys able to do it? Because even people who have maybe two, they're still probably feeling the same stress. But to show them that, hey, I did it with seven. What were the ways you guys were able to really zone in, keep seven kids organized, disciplined when they need to be, loved on when they needed love? You know what I mean? How did you guys do that with so many kids in the household?
Yeah, it's a flood of memories is going through my head right now of some of the things we did, and one of them was we kicked them outside. I
Yep.
mean, we literally did. There were times when, like you say, a house full of seven, four boys and three girls. Sometimes it got a little crazy, and
Oh,
Rachel would just say, "Okay, everybody, time out. Everybody outside." And I want you to make 5 laps around the house. And
yep.
so they did, and we have a creek in our backyard. We have woods, and they'd go out and they'd start exploring, collecting rocks, collecting turtles,
Yep.
frogs, tadpoles, uh, uh, pine cones, leaves, the whole bit. I mean, they're just making their own collections, and we had collections of animals, lizards, and snakes, and anoles, which are little lizards. We had everything. We even had a hedgehog one time for about 5 years, which was a little high maintenance, I'll just say. But he was part of the family. We had praying mantises. Those were actually really enjoyable pets to have because we in the morning for breakfast, the boys would go outside and catch a moth or some insects, and we'd throw them in, and then we'd watch the praying mantis have his breakfast while we're eating our breakfast. And Rachel and I are just kind of looking at each other, going, "Are we really doing this?" But it was great. I mean, you're learning about all these creative animals that God created.
Mhm.
And so that literally was a big part is sending the kids outside to go explore God's creation, get your nature journal, and give mom a break, and then come back and we'll talk about what you discovered, what you found. You can do some show and tell. So that was a big part of it. The other was uh, as it didn't always work well, but I'll still share it, and that is Rachel would assign the older kids to help the younger ones with some of their lessons. Some were more cooperative on that. Some didn't work quite as well, but it's a good enough idea, and I've heard it work for a lot of families that helped kind of divvy up the workload so that Rachel wasn't trying to do something with everybody.
Yep.
The other big piece of advice that she always gives is she always took care of the younger kids first. So, like I said, when I talked about the flow of the day, we'd have a family worship, we'd have breakfast, and then as the older kids are maybe doing, kitchen cleanup responsibilities, then Rachel would go with the younger kids and give them some time and attention. And if she took care of them first, then they were usually satisfied as she then came to the older kids to help direct them. But part of the goal was to get all the older kids to be more independent learners, where we're just being accountable, or we're letting them be accountable to us for the schedule. And so we're looking at, okay, here's the checklist of what you were supposed to get done today. What have you gotten done? And show me your work. That's kind of what we did with the older kids. And as they got better and better at that, then they're literally becoming self-disciplined, self-sufficient,
Yep.
independent learners. They know the routine. They know what works for them too, because all of our kids did different forms. Some were truly independent learners. Some of times they might have a private tutor for math, as an example. Some of them did an online class with 20 to 25 students in a class. We even did a co-op a few years, about 5 years worth, where they're in a group of, a live group and doing different classes together. So we did different formats depending on what worked for them, what they needed, what they wanted, and every summer you're kind of reviewing and tweaking things to get ready for the next school year.
No, a couple of things you said that just reminded me of our journey because my mom was kind of the same way. Hey, get out of the house. Go get out of that. You're not, this is not, get out of the house. Go run. And my sister had a fish tank that she always wanted to get different fishes in. But my brother and I kind of overtook it because we would always run to the canals, catch minnows or catch little like parameter speg or something, bring them home, drop them right in her tank. And she would get so upset. But it was just like, we were able to go like, okay, let's build this net. We have this. What do we have? We have a bucket. Let's put some holes in it here. Catch it up, using our brains, being creative. And then we'd run home, drop them in her fish tank. She would come in her room and be like, why are there different fish in my fish tank? This is not what I want. But it gave us the freedom to actually have that time together to where, hey, we're the school, we're not comprehending. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. Go out there, run around, burn that energy off so that when you do come back in, you're able to actually sit down, focus. And another thing you said that I liked was you had the older ones help teach. Even though it's not such a big magnitude, but they're gaining leadership skills. They're gaining those little life skills that they're actually going to use in the real world just by sitting down there and saying, hey, this is this, teaching them. These are skills that we don't focus on in the traditional education, but just by going through life as a homeschooling family, they're getting amplified. They're understanding. They're learning this stuff that you could never learn inside of a normal childhood. When it comes to the co-ops and like you said, the online classes, do you think, because I know right now, especially here in Florida, the little schools and the co-ops, they're really kind of going off. Do you think that's something parents should really dive into, or do you think kind of just see if it flows into your day, as you said before?
Yeah, I mean, again, the beauty of homeschooling is you get to do whatever makes the most sense for your family, for your kids. And so every year doesn't have to look the same. I do like to say that for our family, we didn't make the decision to homeschool on an annual basis. After year 4, we were committed to this. No matter, it was so good for our family, that was not a decision. But how we were going to do it each year was a decision.
Love that.
And so, and as the kids got older, we included them more and more in the conversation about, did you like the video math, the private tutor math, the online class, the co-op math? Which ones worked with you? And we'd have a conversation with them, and then we'd make a decision, and then we'd sign up for whichever one we thought was going to be the best one that year. And again, so I would say every family can do. You can mix and match it and change it up each year. There were times we thought we have found the curriculum that works for our kid, and even though it went well that year, they just wanted to do something different the next year. Like, oh, okay,
Yep.
this is your education too. So, again, as they got older, we would let them have more say. With the younger ones, we're driving it a little bit more. But then we typically did, extracurricular activities. So when they were younger, they had to take piano or violin.
Love that.
We knew that was an important part of their education, not for discussion. Then when they were older, I will say for boys, playing a sport proved to be very good for our boys. They got a lot of energy that they need to burn off, and to go, for a football practice, a soccer practice for, several hours every day of the week was very important for mom and dad's sanity. And it was good for them too. And there's a lot of leadership and mental toughness and teamwork that can come into sports. I highly recommend a Christian type setting if at all possible. Just so you have good language, you have Christian values, you built into that to some degree. But again, sports is a good example where every year we'd say, okay, kids, here's your options. You can do soccer, taekwondo, or swimming. Pick 2. and it has to be the same 2 for everybody, because we're not going to be driving around all over the place. And so that was a way, with 7 kids, to kind of limit what we did to keep us together as a family. We often felt like this amoeba that just kind of moved around in the big van, with everybody, and we'd all show up at the soccer field because 4 of the 7 were playing soccer, but we were all there. and we go
Love
to the
that.
practice together. Maybe we brought a picnic dinner and we do the practice, we do the games. And then, on one other night of the week, maybe two or three of the kids are doing Taekwondo. And we go there, stay there for an hour or two, do the thing, come back, but we're not running around every night doing something crazy. And then we did Awana, which is a Bible memory program. And the beauty of Awana is most of the years we were homeschooling, it was on Sunday night. And so that was the time when Rachel did her planning. So I literally took the kids to Awana for 3 or 4 luxurious hours while she had time to, okay, I'm in the house all by myself. And she could clean the kitchen. She could do nothing. She could take a bath. She could do some planning. And so those were really good years when that happened, because then I'm taking them to Awana. I'm helping them out. I'm coming back. At that point, because I'm so integrally involved, I know what each kid is memorizing. And it proved to be really good in terms of the relationship building, the Bible memory, which was a big important part of our kids growing up that we wanted to instill. And then that was something we practiced at the dinner table.
Man, that is beautiful. I know we're kind of getting down to the end here, but one thing I really want to make sure we touch on. So homeschooling parents, a lot of times, they're stressing if whether or not they're setting their kids up for success later on in life. Is there anything that you can talk to them about, like even if they feel unqualified when it comes to the education or the social aspect, to give them confidence that, hey, you are doing everything necessary to set your kids up with the right life skills?
Yeah, I mean, you really are. You're teaching life skills. You're teaching family life. You're teaching what it looks like to walk by faith. I mean, homeschooling is so much more than just academics. That's part of it. And the beauty is you actually get to instill your values as a Christian family to, this is what it looks like to follow God, to answer the question, what is God calling you to do? To walk by faith, to see God in creation, to see God in your studies. This is one reason why Apologia's curriculum is all creation-based science, creation-based math. I mean, math should never be religiously neutral. God is the designer of math. And obviously creation-based Bible curriculum. So that's what families have an opportunity to do with their kids, is to show them that this is all God's world. History is God's history. Language is from God. At the Tower of Babel, who created all these languages? God did. And then he's given us his word in written form and in the physical form of Jesus. I mean, language is from God. It's very essential to who God is. So there is no subject that you can study in school that doesn't directly touch to God. And if you talk about it that way with your kids, and then of course, as you do the discipline with your kids, if you're with your kids that much, some people think you're going to do this, you're going to butt heads. We had 2 strong-willed kids, a male version and a female version, and we had several compliant kids and some in between. But what we found was the more time we spent together in the homeschool setting, the closer we actually got, the more we actually knew about each other, interest, personalities, and all that. And so as you continue down this homeschool path as a family, you start to discover how God is someone you can rely on for the results. You don't have to make everything happen or force everything to happen. God will fill in gaps that a school bus can drive through, and you can trust him and rely on him for all the results. You don't have to be the best homeschool parents. You just got to be faithful, teach them to love reading, love learning, love God, and you're going to have most everything else is going to fall into place.
The last thing, which you kind of just did, the last thing I'd like you to do is to touch on Apologia, kind of, if a parent's new to homeschooling, they're trying to find a curriculum, what all do you guys do to kind of help them out succeed? And what you just did really just explained it beautifully, but if you could just go a little bit deeper, just to highlight what you guys do and how you guys go about helping and setting the kids up to be successful.
Sure. So we're committed to keeping our curriculum creation-based. There is a growing secular market in homeschooling, but we're not going to water down our curriculum. hoping to sell more books. What we're actually hoping to do is to be the best science, math, and Bible curriculum so that people come to us for those subjects, and then by virtue of using our curriculum and being together as a homeschool family, the gospel is shared, heard, and believed by families that might not be looking for God when they come to us. So that's our hope and vision and goal. But at Apologia, we do creation-based science, math, and Bible. Those are the three things we concentrate on curriculum-wise. But we want to help homeschool families get started, stay in the game, and succeed by having the most successful, enjoyable, Christ-centered homeschool experience possible. It is sometimes, I like to call it an adventure of a lifetime, meaning it's a walk by faith. It can be scary. Sometimes it feels like a roller coaster ride with twists and turns and, oh boy, my stomach can't handle this. And other times it may feel more like the lazy river, and you can just kind of sit back and bask in the sun and say, wow, God, thank you for getting us started on this journey. This is so good for us. I'm going to do it forever. And then next year will be a harder year. But it goes back and forth. And that is, again, the beauty of walking by faith, persevering, character building for parents as well as the kids. But we have all kinds of other resources. We got social media. We got a blog. You can sign up for our email blog and read all kinds of articles, devotionals, how to use our curriculum, why to homeschool, how to homeschool, all the, who, what, when, where, and how of that. Ultimately, we want to affirm and encourage families in the decision to homeschool and challenge and inspire them to take it to the next level, and then celebrate all these amazing things you get to experience in this adventure of a lifetime, whether it's the start of a school year, the start of high school, or the graduation at the end. Because a graduation in homeschooling is a full family event. Everybody was involved in it in some way, shape, or form. And so that's what we do. But here's a couple websites for the audience that might be helpful. Apologia.com is our main website. Apologia. It's a Greek word meaning to defend the faith. And we do that by way of publishing creation-based science, math, and Bible. But if you go to apologia.com/blog, you can see all of our blog articles. If you go to apologia.com/podcast, we have our own podcast called the Let's Talk Homeschool podcast. If you go to apologia.com/free, FREE, we got all kinds of free stuff. PDFs, audios, videos, links, all kinds of great stuff. And the last one is apologia.com/bootcamp. And this is 12 videos that you can watch in any order at your own pace. It's all free. And it basically answers frequently asked questions that people have. How to get started, how to pick curriculum, how does this affect my marriage, how do I schedule the day? We've gotten tremendous response from that, but it's a resource to help families get started, stay in the game, persevere, and succeed.
I love that. Mr. Carman, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with us, man. I know our parents are going to absolutely love this. We'll make sure we create resources as well as write a blog about each one. We'll put all those resources in there and keep doing what you're doing. And what a success story your family is, just for all the homeschoolers out there. 7 kids, allowing God to show the way. I mean, you guys are doing it right. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Beth. Great being
Thank you
with
very
you all
much.
today. Love conversations like this.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Man, I hope you have a
Yes.
blessed day. And hopefully you guys get some good weather up there in North Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
Bye-bye, my man.
Bye.